Welcome to our podcast today. My name is John Millette, and the name of our podcast is Leaving Your Legacy, Stories About Homeownership. And we emphasize that stories is very important because a lot of people have amazing stories that they really underestimate. They underestimate the power of the story. They underestimate the power of their lives and what these stories are all about. And so we like to get the idea of what these stories are, whether it's a first-time home buyer, a real estate professional, whatever their story may be. We find that the more questions we ask, the deeper we dive into what they're about. It's amazing the kind of stories that come up and what we find and what we can learn from them so that we ourselves can be better and more informed individuals. And that is who we have as our guest today. As our guest today, we are really excited here to have Brooke Grayson with us, who is the president-elect of the Canale Simi Moore Park Board of Realtors here in this area. She has extraordinary leadership skills. She's been in the business for 16 years in the real estate business, and we're really looking forward to having her with us today. So, Brooke, it's great to have you. Thank you for coming today. This is wonderful.
This is really great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you bet. So, tell me a little bit about before we want to find out your story. We also want to help fellow real estate professionals get an idea of what's working for you. Today is kind of a challenging time right now. You know, there's some anxiety going on, and the cheese has been moved, right? And so when we talk about that book called Who Moved My Cheese, you know, we're saying, well, where is it and how do we get it? And so what are some of the things you're doing right now to help you in your quest to do that and help people?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. That's a really great question, actually. This is a very challenging market that we're in this year. 2023, we're in September, and interest rates are touching the 8s at this point, yes?
Yes.
So coming from the 2s and 3s of the pandemic era, we have very little homes for sale, and buyers are really struggling, especially our first buyers, with the affordability here in Southern California, and also with the inventory. So we're still seeing when a house comes on the market, we're seeing the multiple offers. It's very highly competitive, and we're writing many offers for our buyers over and over again until they finally get that one to stick, generally. So in a market like this, where as a real estate agent, we're really not getting a lot of business coming in from what we're used to in the past, I really had to look within. There's a little temptation, I think, that some agents have where they think, well, maybe this isn't the right industry for me. Maybe this isn't the right career for me, especially if you're relatively newly licensed, because you don't know any better. You don't know the difference between this market. You don't understand the cyclical real estate market because you haven't lived it. Fortunately, I have lived it. I've seen how the market ebbs and flows and has its own season. And so
That's an interesting thought. It has its own season.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, we have our 12 months. We have the temperature seasons that we go through every year as humans, but the market itself has droughts and has floods and has fair weather and it has blizzards. And right now I really feel like we're in this very strange weather in our housing market. So I looked within and I thought, right now, I might not be out there going 100 miles an hour closing deals, but what I am going to do is reinvest in my business, reinvest in myself. So I'm taking a large amount of the commission that I'm making and investing in my coaching. I'm investing in my marketing, and I'm really looking at the relationships that I have had the blessing of starting in the past few years, and now I'm just deepening these relationships and really getting to know who's in my life, who's in my circle, and how I can be of value to them.
Wow, excellent. Tell me a little bit about your coaching.
Yeah, so I coach with David Kesey, who is he was a professional baseball player. And he has a league of coaches that work with him. And we meet 3 times a week and work on, it's a lot of emotional intelligence.
Tell me about that.
So, you know, there's a lot of work that we need to do as entrepreneurs, not just as real estate agents, but as business owners. It's like a drilling down to what the fundamentals. So when we focus on taking care of ourselves, our diet, our sleep, our rest, our self-care, and get that base level of needs managed, then we can focus on our business. And that looks like making sure that we're having new conversations every day, making sure that we're revisiting our friends and our past clients and having those deepening, enriching conversations every day, making sure that we're posting content, whether it be through an email or through social media, through video. We need to make sure that we are consistently sharing with our community that we do know what we do for a living, we are an authority in our business, and that we are trustworthy for their referrals.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay, so that is really interesting to me, and the reason why is that my belief is that the riches are in the niches. And so what you're doing is you're deepening the value of the relationships that you have. And the thing that I like most about what you said is that we are the experts. You know, the challenge that a lot of the real estate community is facing today is that we're getting marginalized in whether or not we're really needed. And I find it so interesting when people go out and they say, well, I'll just go ahead and sell the house on my own. You know, they tried that for about 1 or 2 weeks, and they realize that A, they don't want people coming in their home that they don't even know who they are. B, they're not sure who these people are to the extent that it's going to really create a problem, right? And whether or not they're even qualified to be able to buy their home.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, this value proposition of what a real estate professional is all about gets higher and higher and higher, because you find out that you have errors and omissions, you have coverage for insurance under you, you have the ability to figure out whether or not these people are qualified even before they set foot in your home, right? Into the home of the person that's, and so ultimately, when people put their house on the market for themselves, usually they say, okay, after about 2 weeks, it's like, okay, I need a real estate profession, right? And then you're saying, and the thing that's so interesting is my understanding is that with a real estate professional, generally speaking, you'll actually get more money for your home than you would having tried to sell it on your own.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, the chances for lawsuit are open. I mean, it's incredible. It's like trying to do your own brain surgery when you're trying to sell your own home. People marginalize that. They underestimate that it's not just a stick being put in the ground. And so the fact that you talk about that you are the expert is like number one priority. It's a number one priority that people understand that there are experts in that field, that they think that it's something that they can do on their own. It's like someone trying to go out and fix their own car. Well, I don't fix cars. I have no idea what to do once my hood comes up. I can change the oil, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So when someone tells me this is what needs to be done, I go, okay, that sounds reasonable, right?
It's about staying in your lane, too. I mean, you are a mortgage professional. So when a client comes to me and starts asking me questions about their finances or what they might qualify for, I don't try and give them an answer because I don't have that. I'm not in that wheelhouse every day.
Yeah.
So I rely on you as my team member to help my clients better understand what's affordable, what's attainable. Sometimes their price point's a lot higher than I thought it would be.
Right.
And
they underestimate their ability.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people are not ready yet. You know, homeownership is not for everybody right now. It could be their path 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but they don't know until they sit down with somebody like you. I can help them. I heard a great metaphor, and it's that a real estate agent or any professional in their field are the pilot of the plane. The client comes onto the plane, they tell the pilot where they want to go, but they don't tell the pilot how to get there.
Exactly.
So we're here to get them from where they are to where they want to be,
right,
safely and with very little turbulence. And when we do have that turbulence, which does happen through an escrow transaction sometimes, we're here to navigate it, keep things safe and calm as much as possible, and to land them safely out.
You know, that is a great metaphor, because I was on a plane a little while back with a pilot of a jet. And it was several years ago, and he was a pilot for the 747. You know, they're still flying, not as many as they were. Big plane. And he happened to be sitting next to me. He was on another leg going to an area, the next airport so he could fly out of. And I looked at him and I said, planes can fly by remote control. Why do they need you? And he looked at me and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, yes, planes do fly by themselves. We can do that. They can take off, they can land, they can do everything by themselves. The problem is when problems come up. And when a problem comes up, that's what I get paid the big bucks for. And I think as a real estate professional, when we're talking about the largest asset that somebody owns, and all of a sudden a problem comes up that can really alter their ability to have that income from that property when it sells or if they're buying or whatever it might be, all of a sudden it becomes, wait a minute, I need help, right? And that's where your expertise comes in.
Absolutely.
And that's why the idea of trying to marginalize a real estate professional is utterly ridiculous. It's so important to be able to have that education that we may not be brain surgeons, but I'm going to tell you, we do take care of where you live. Yeah. And so that is a really big piece of the equation. And the other thing that I was really intrigued about with you when you were talking about your coaching was the idea of your emotional intelligence and taking care of yourself first. Now that to me is really a big deal, because if you don't have your act together, then how is it possible that you can help somebody help them get their act in order, get their house in order, right? And I am finding that more and more real estate professionals, the ones who are really committed to their career like you are taking the time to really look inward and saying, what is it that I need to do so that when the opportunity comes up, as it does all the time, I'm there and I can connect and the people will know that I'm the one to help them.
Yeah. And I look at this career personally as an athlete would look at their career. I get up in the morning and I have my routine. I get into the gym as often as possible. I'm still working on my daily gym routine.
Right.
But I want to make sure that I start my day off right.
Yeah.
So I take care of my physical. I take care of what I put inside my body, what I eat, what I drink. I make sure that when I enter the office, which I try and do consistently every day, I stick to a routine that serves me so that I can better serve my clients.
See, now that really shows that you're committed to the business.
Yes.
Right? And so that would lead me to the next question. And I always find this so interesting. I mean, it's just so interesting to me is that people don't graduate from college and decide to go be a real estate professional, right? There's something that happens in their lives that causes them to make that change. And it's so interesting because a lot of real estate professionals are college educated. They have MBAs, they have graduate degrees, they have PhDs. I mean, these people are like off the charts bright, right? And here they are in the real estate community, and all of a sudden they are able to provide a service because their background is so varied that they can give people something that they could never get from an experiential, from a based on experience in their past. And so tell me why did you decide to become a real estate professional? What was it that...
I love this question because the real estate agents who are doing well, who are very successful in this business, do have so much value to offer. They care about their clients and they come with so much background. A lot of them do come with college degrees, university degrees. I come with a degree from the School of Hard Knocks.
Okay.
So I did go to college often, did not graduate. I'm so proud of my sister. She graduated from Arizona State, and she did. And then she was all 4.0, I think. And yeah, but she took the path that my brother and I did not take. My brother is a very successful business owner. He runs Grayson Termite and Pest Control here in Ventura County.
Okay.
And I'm also entrepreneur minded. I think it comes from genetics from my father.
Tell me about that a little bit.
My father, we grew up. My dad ran a termite and pest control company as well.
Okay.
Very successful. And I grew up in a very blessed childhood. We would have vacations in the Caribbean, and we moved from Simi Valley to Idaho when I was 13.
Oh, interesting.
Lived in a very comfortable life there. I had horses, I did a little rodeo, and loved that lifestyle that Idaho offered.
Yeah.
I moved from there because I wanted to be a famous movie star.
Ah, okay.
So I left Idaho Falls, Idaho for Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
Came back to this area and started taking some acting classes. Realized I was way too introverted to do that, and ended up running a craft service company for the film industry.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did that from the ages of 18 to 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 to 20. That's amazing.
And so I look at, when I look at my whole
So 18 to 20, that means when you left home, you were fairly young.
Yes.
And you had a lot of confidence, right? Because kids don't generally just leave and go pursue their dreams. So you had a dream. And that means that you've got passion. That means you have an ability to be able to say, wait a minute, this is where I want to be. Which I think is fantastic. So go ahead. This is great. I'm really interested.
Yes. Well, and I'm really interested to hear your story too. I heard in the past podcast that you used to live in the projects. So I want to hear how that.
Okay, we can do that. All right.
So sure. So I worked here. I ran a business, and a very close friend of mine passed away suddenly, tragically, in a car accident. And I was very young mentally. I wasn't mature enough psychologically to really handle that well. Mm-hmm. I ended up not being able to maintain the business and moving back to Idaho for a while to lick my wounds, I guess, in a sense, to grieve and hibernate and get back to, some sort of stability.
Right.
And
that can be so hard.
It was
really challenging.
It was definitely very challenging.
Yeah.
I got back together with a friend of mine that I had dated before moving here, and he and I moved to Oklahoma together. Okay. And from there to Portland, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And that's where through this time, I got a license in phlebotomy and was working in hospitals drawing blood.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm a huge proponent of the vocational schools because if you're not mentally suited to go to a college or a university and get a degree, having that vocational certificate will help you pretty much live anywhere in the country, or sometimes even the world, and make a good living. Yeah, and it definitely worked for me. So
now, what caused you to go to phlebotomy?
I had a friend who had the license in phlebotomy. I was afraid of blood. Whenever I saw blood, I would I faint. I do too. So it was funny because my first class, we were learning how to do this, and there was no actual blood. I was just reading a textbook, and I got tunnel vision, and they had to lay me down in a bed. But by the time I finished, my career, really, which was about 4 or 5 years into doing it, I was very good. I was called out for the difficult sticks in the hospital and babies and ICU.
And what do you owe that to? I mean, because you started where you couldn't even hardly get it done, but then you persevered. And you just kind of push through it.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Because I'm looking for the characteristic that breeds that kind of success, because that's massive.
I think
that's not giving up when things get tough.
No, it's actually when something's really challenging, I address it head on, which is a blessing and a curse, I think, in some cases. Mm-hmm. But I am not the non-confrontational type. If a confrontation needs to happen, I will have it. And fortunately, as I mature, it gets more refined and graceful. But there are some bumps in the road with my confrontational personality in my younger years. For
sure. And where do you think that comes from?
My father. No, I think I think we inherit certain traits, and my father's a wonderful human. Let's go back to him because I wanted to talk about what I learned from him.
Yeah.
I love him with all of my heart, and he has always been a true inspiration to me. He is my number one pep talk coach when I need advice, when I need consolation, when I need to have my feet put back on the ground. Yeah. I call my dad. Wow. And growing up with him, he is a master salesman. But he and I both have the trait where we are not able to hide how we feel, unfortunately. So if we are uncomfortable or if somebody is annoying, we have a very hard time hiding how we feel about the situation that we're in. So
Well, I'm not sure if that's unfortunate. I think that's a strength.
it can be a
It
strength.
really can be. Because people know where you're at.
Exactly.
Right.
The transparency is very helpful.
Yeah.
So as a salesman, he knew instantly whether, when he was on the phone with somebody, whether or not somebody was worth his time or a waste of his time. And I wasn't intentionally listening to his phone calls, but you just, through osmosis, you hear it and you embody it. And I could just learn that when he realized he was wasting time with somebody who was never going to go anywhere with what they were doing. Right now, he has a career as a vintage motocross dirt bike salesperson.
Wow.
So he collects these dirt bikes and sells them and spends a lot of time listening to people, talking to people, and selling these bikes. And it's interesting hearing him talk because he is so good at just saying something exactly the way it is, but selling. And one thing he always told me is that, Brooke, we sell for a living, whether you realize it or not. You need to have sales skills, whether you're an employee or a business owner or a commission-based salesperson, because in every career that you have, you must sell yourself first.
Yeah. Persuasion, communication are a big deal.
Yes. And so I learned his knack for charisma.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is not only did you push through your challenges, but when we talk about the idea of being transparent, I would think that for a real estate professional to their clients, that is a number one priority because people don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And they really don't know it till you bring it to their attention.
Right.
And it seems to me the agents that I've interviewed and that I've worked with over the last many years has really been a case for those who can, in a nice way, let the clients know this is what you need to do.
Yes.
This will make a difference between you getting the sales price you're asking for or $50,000 over that sales price.
Yes.
Right. And so it has a big, big determination on how the transaction will end.
And real estate agents are not a one-size-fits-all. I learned that lesson. And when you said the riches are in the niches, I am feeling so fortunate that I have discovered that for myself. Because when I first got my license, I tried to please everybody. I wanted everyone to be my ideal client.
Yeah.
And I've realized as I've become more grounded and confident in what I do and how I serve the community, how I serve my clients, nobody is a one-size-fits-all. Who my ideal client is for me does not fit another, like a top-producing agent.
Yeah.
They have an ideal client that would not be a good fit for me or mine would not be a good fit for them. We attract who we are.
Yes.
And once we embody our authenticity and our story and what we're here to do, who we're here to serve, that's when we really start to get in our groove and feel the success.
That is amazing. That is really amazing because that's really where it's at. Right. And that's what's really cool about what you've been working. Okay. So tell me, after the phlebotomy, then what happened? Then what did you do?
Well, before we get into that, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I know that lenders are not a one-size-fits-all either.
Right.
And I've watched you, and I see how you have decided that your niche, you do all sorts of loans for first-time buyers to seasoned investors. But it seems to me that your passion is of the first-time home buyer. And I'm curious to know more about.
Well, I like first-time home buyers because I think homeownership is transformational. And I think that the aspect of homeownership is so empowering to an individual. And I think that people who own homes underestimate the fact that they own a home and the kind of stability that it brings. And right now, there is a real need for helping first-time home buyers get into homes. When I was their age, as a boomer, okay, so I'm a little bit older guy, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit easier to qualify for housing at that time. And what was really interesting, Brooke, is that the study that I read that showed that at about age 35, baby boomers, if you go back to when they were about 35 years old, I think it was 35 or 34 years old, they owned about 36% of the real estate in the United States, right?
That's amazing.
Well, today, the millennial at age 31 owns 4%. And the millennial generation is 77 million people. So they are actually larger than the boomer generation. There's more of them, but there's a much lower percentage of home ownership. And so in my book, I talk about what I want to do is ignite a home buying revolution. And the reason why I want to do that is that the way that the capital system of our country is made up is that the ownership of a home is a big deal because that's what you can rely on for retirement. And the problem that millennials are having that my heart really goes out to is that they were the ones whose parents got foreclosed upon. So they saw this cognitive dissonance of home. All of a sudden, home ownership did not mean the American dream. It meant the fact that they were kicked out of their house, that they were evicted, and there were about 30 to 35 million people affected by the subprime crisis who actually lost their homes. That's a big number. And the ripple effect, that's why if you go to any millennial today and you say, do you know anybody who was evicted from their home? Every one of them can tell you somebody they knew that happened to.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, there's this disconnect between why I should buy a home. I mean, I can talk to some millennials and say, you should buy a home because it's the American dream. Well, when I say it's the American dream, I might get a hand signal that's not very nice, right? Because it's like, no, man, I saw my parents get evicted. What's the big deal, right? Well, the issue is that if they continue to rent as lifetime renters, if their rent today is $2,500, when they get 65 years old and they're ready to retire, their rent will be $9,000 a month.
And that's nothing.
Exactly. So how can you possibly fix that, right? You can't. By the time you're 65, it's too late.
It's a mission for you.
Right.
It's a mission for me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why it's really, and it also goes with aging individuals that are really having a tough time. We do a lot of asset optimization to help them make it through their years because they're living longer lives. So there's a lot that goes into that. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Well, it gives me yes, I agree with everything that you said. And I see the passion. I hear the passion in your voice.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
And when I lived in Portland with my daughter's dad, let's rewind by about 20 years. My daughter's 20 today.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, she's a blessing in my life, a shining light. But at that time, I was 22 years old. And my fiance at the time, her dad, and I lived together, and we had barely 2 pennies to rub together. We were on welfare.
Oh, interesting.
And we're, doing our best to raise a daughter. And
right.
There are some key moments in your lives where you don't realize maybe at the time that it was a turning point for you.
Yeah.
The one that keeps coming up for me was he and I were dedicated to investing in our future. Like I said, we had no money. We went to, I forget where it was a investment firm, Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And walked in there, 2 punks, with a baby in their arms, no money, walked in and sat down with somebody, had made an appointment, wanting to be educated. How do we do this? We look around, we see these people driving nice cars, shopping at Trader Joe's. How do they do it? We're in our little junky Escort from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Caught fire downtown the other day. I had to run into McDonald's and get a cup of water to pour on the engine. It's just really bad. And we just wanted to find an answer. And we were not treated with respect. And it was because I think we were stereotyped. We walked in, they saw we had no money, and they saw no opportunity. They had no what's in it for them at that moment.
Right.
We were disrespected, and we were basically given the boot and back on the pavement. And I think in that moment, I realized that whatever it is that I decide to do with my life, with my career, I will never look down on somebody who was just looking for a way up, just looking for some guidance, looking for some help.
Yeah.
And today, in the position that I'm in now, if it weren't for my husband's veteran loan, the VA loan, I would still be a renter right now. It's so challenging to have that down payment, to make sure that you can have a plan, have a blueprint, and some sort of guidance or hand-holding to get you, even if it's a 10-year plan, at least have somebody show you it's possible and how to make it happen. Nobody ever did that for me. And so my passion is to reach out to the millennial and show them their pathway, and I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if I'm the agent. Like you, it's a crisis right now.
Right.
And what are they going to do when they're seniors and they still have no asset to rely on, nothing to loan against to get their kids through college, to get themselves through college if they're still trying? I mean, homeownership provides that, if nothing else. So
yeah, and that's why it's underestimated right now.
Yeah.
That's why people really don't realize the power of what it brings. And in this market, for me to come out, I mean, on TikTok, when I do my reels on TikTok, some of the comments I get are just brutal.
Yeah.
Right? Where they say, oh, no, wait, there's going to be a crash, or wait, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm just going, okay, this is great. This is great success because I'm actually triggering some comments here from people for them to think twice about what's really going on. And I think that that's really what you're doing. And the thing that I noticed with the transaction that we just closed, they were a little bit older couple. The thing that I was so impressed about is your ability to be very patient and never give up on them, because they had to figure it out, right? They had just gotten married. They're a beautiful couple, and they had different expectations, and you guided them through so amazingly.
Yeah.
And where do you think that patience and that compassion comes from?
I don't know.
Because you were very forthright. You led them in the right direction, but you did it with such compassion.
Thank you.
They didn't feel pressured. They felt like, okay, we have lots of room.
Yeah.
We can make a decision on our own. When my writing coach reminds me a lot like you. When I was writing my book, and I would say, well, what about this sentence? This one sentence, right? And it's like most people would say, give it up. Just write it. It doesn't matter, but he would say, well, tell me about what your thoughts are behind that sentence.
Yes.
What is it that you're trying to communicate? What's the wording that we're using here to try to make a difference for someone to actually want to read this stuff, right? And so when we talk about your capability and what you're doing as far as helping clients through that, so you're not sure where that comes from, but what's the...
if it really... To simplify it, really, I need to be able to sleep at night. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter whether or not I'm getting a commission check at the end of this. I need to know by the time the sun sets that I've given the past 12 hours all of myself, the best of myself. I have added value to someone's life. And if my clients have hired me to do that, it doesn't mean that they're hiring me to sell them a house. They're hiring me to guide them through the whole process.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. So not only, so you're not looking at selling a house.
No.
The value that you're bringing is to help them through the entire process.
Absolutely.
And after that.
Yes. And after that.
Right.
Yes. The friendships that I build through this career are more important to me. Yeah. I don't do this to sell houses. I honestly don't care a whole lot about houses. I care a whole lot about people, though.
Interesting. So it's not just a stick in the ground, right?
No.
And so and I think that people really need to understand what you bring to the table, because the next question I have is, well, what makes you different? Well, I think that that's what really creates a big difference, because your value proposition is one of a long-term basis, right? A value proposition that says, I care about you more than I do my own commission.
Absolutely. And I've said that word a lot as I'm saying this, but you're very good at summarizing the point that your guests are trying to make.
Yeah.
That is absolutely it. I want to make sure that I spend the time that I have here on this planet adding value to other people's lives.
Right.
Life is short. People that we know in our circles, people that we care about, it's always a little jarring when one of them passes away.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it's a reflection. A friend of mine I know of who's made a major impact in our community recently passed away. And it's just another reminder of, we have this time, we have this gift of time on the planet, and we have our modality, our career you help people get into home ownership.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, because you're not like me. You're not selling a house. You're getting people established. You're helping a family put down roots. You're helping people have that sense of stability. It helps their marriage. It helps their parenting. It helps their career growth. It helps them become invested in their community in one way or another, whether it be as a Little League coach or as a nonprofit volunteer. It's what you do enriches people's lives. And at the end of the day, when we're no longer here, the legacy that we leave behind really needs to be, in my opinion, how many people did we benefit by being here?
Yeah.
I
think that's beautiful. I think that's really amazing. And I think that if people would know what it is that you offer and that's your value proposition, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this discussion today, I would take you in a heartbeat.
Oh, thank you.
Just simply because you've got so much more there. And I think that it's really a value to be able to offer that kind of your whole self. So you're not just offering your services, you're offering yourself, your presence. You're coming around and saying, this is what I can do for you. And this is why it's so important that we work together.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about the course that we have planned putting together for first-time home buyers.
Yes.
I've had some people first-time home buyers who close. One of them specifically reached out to me recently, sent me a tax bill and asked me a question, what is this? How should I pay it? Is this what you were talking to me about, supplemental and whatever? And she said, when I was buying the house, I felt so dumb. And I'm so glad that, you were there to help guide me through it. But I really wish that there was a home buying 101. And when I heard her say that to me, I thought, that is a need that really needs to be filled.
Yeah.
And I think that a home buying 101 course is going to be very valuable to a lot of people.
Yeah, that they can watch. Yeah. Now, you said you had some questions for me.
I do.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to know more about your journey. You said with Teresa that you started in the project.
In the podcast, yes.
Yeah, and with Teresa Robledo.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know more about, you really dug in with her about how past experiences make you challenges, or great experiences. I'd love to know more about your journey to get to who you are today. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your childhood.
Well, I think that for me, when our dad walked out on us, he was not a good guy. And so I had kind of been swimming in that environment for quite some time. I was the youngest of 4 children. And so my mother said, okay, we've got to do something. Okay, he's gone. I got to do this now. And this was back quite a while. So, for a woman to be able to rise up and say, this is what I have to do, it really is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And so she committed to going to Cal Poly. She got enrolled and she got admitted and accepted. And so we moved to San Luis Obispo. And during the course of from ages 8 to 14, I've told this story a couple times, we moved about 4 to 5 times because we couldn't pay the rent. And so as a result of that, the only option left was to move into government housing, which was projects. And we were fortunate because we had a roof over our head. I felt very fortunate at the time. And the issue is that the environment there is not a good environment. People who live in the projects a lot of times will stay in the projects. There's a good sized percentage that do that because they don't really know of any other life or going on. And I would say that what made the difference for me is my mother dragging me to church, where every Sunday I would hear, you're more than you think you are, you can do things. There were normal families there, and so I got a chance to be able to see what was going on, and I really hated it. I didn't like it at all. And then, and so I knew that someday, and so I got this kind of feeling that when I was living in the project, I was just a visitor. It was not going to happen I was not going to be there for a long period of time. And so I realized that I worked in a camera store. I was selling cameras, stereos, TVs, things like that. I started out as a stock boy, and I said, hey, I want to sell. And the owner said no. And finally, he let me sell. And so I started selling. And then to put myself through school, I sold books door to door,
Oh, wow.
as children's values and things like that. And did very well with that. Crushed all the company records, all that kind of thing. And so I really learned the ability to communicate and to sell was really a big deal for me.
I can see how you would probably naturally disarm somebody with your genuine approach. You're very soft-spoken. You're transparent in your delivery, and I can see how that is a very charismatic quality as a salesperson.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to. It was interesting because when I was selling books for children, it was really interesting because when you have a sell that you buy from the salesman on door-to-door basis, and that doesn't really happen much anymore today.
Yeah.
But at that time, they had 3 days to cancel, right? They always had a cooling off period,
Oh.
right?
Oh.
And so the last thing you wanted was to make the sell, right? Because if they said, well, we want to think about it, they're basically saying no.
Right.
And so I had to really build the need and make sure that it was good for them. And then I did, and as a result of that, I had very few, if any, cancellations. When other of my peers, they were pressuring and forcing,
Right.
and they would always get that cancellation. And so I learned the value of being able to genuinely say, this is how parents are using, this is what it's being used for. These are the types of benefits that you can have from it.
Yeah.
Really caring about the individual so that they could see that there was value to what it was that I had.
For them specifically.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And really try to hone in on what it was that they need. And that's what I feel is so interesting about you, is that when you talk to your clients, you really get an idea of who they are and what they want.
Yes, I do.
Right? And it's not just about the sell, it's about who these people are. So, well, I'm so glad you came today.
Thank you.
So if there's any one last thing that you would like to say, what would you say? Well, a couple of things. One, what would you say to millennials, zillennials, Gen Z? What would you say to them? Because it's definitely harder to get financing than it was back when I was growing up. But the beautiful thing is it's still possible. There was a survey just recently that showed that 36% of people who rent are mortgage ready. And that's a huge number of individuals that can buy, and most of them don't know it.
Right.
Or it might be seniors that don't think that they can make the move when they really can. So what would you say to millennials, first of all, people that are renting?
You don't know the difference between homeownership and renting until you know. So I would just ask you to take some steps towards it in good faith. Trust those who are telling you that the value of being a homeowner is life-changing, not just for you and your immediate family, but for your kids. You are building generational wealth by having the courage and the discipline today to put aside as much as you can, even if it means you're not getting a Starbucks latte today, and you're putting that money aside into talk with a financial advisor, of course, but work out some sort of plan where your savings can become compounded over time, and you can earn that little nest egg that you need to invest in your first home, because it's not just for you, which you will experience the benefits, I promise you that, but it's for generations to come as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So what would you like to say? If the whole world was listening to Brooke Grayson right now,
Oh gosh.
what would you like to end with?
I would like to talk to realtors out there today and encourage them. First of all, I encourage you that you are in a very valuable and important industry as a real estate agent. And I urge you to continue to respect who you are and the value that you give to your clients and to your community, because you are so priceless and valuable to the people that you serve. And I also encourage real estate agents to look into ways that they can step into leadership, either within their own associations, within their brokerages, or even just within, not even just, but definitely within your community. Look at Rotary and Kiwanis and other nonprofits that feed you. Like I invest in, I donate to many mansions here in the Ventura County and Los Angeles County. I'm a part of a real estate alliance. And that just is a small commitment of a little donation that I get with every closing. But it's so helpful and meaningful to the organization and to the community. I also am with Soroptimist of Simi Valley and with the local region. Soroptimist is for women and girls. And I'm president-elect of that organization as well. And it's just, as a real estate agent, you have a relationship building business. And if you're not out there meeting your community, how are you building those relationships? You could be door knocking, you could be cold calling, but I encourage you to add to that element the volunteering, because you're giving back to your community and you're adding value, and the relationships that you build through those efforts are so much more meaningful, I think, and it just elevates you and your profession.
Very cool.
That's what I would like to say.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Brooke. So great to have you
Thank
here.
you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Sorry.